have a very exciting guest on the podcast. I'm here with Sonia Taylor, who leads our Hong Kong office, and we're in live from Hong Kong. So welcome, Sonia.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
It's hot. I think one thing you don't see behind Zoom is the temperature. And I know you guys are always in the office and we're laughing and joking about it, but I'm actually feeling the humidity of Hong Kong the last couple of days. But all right, well, I appreciate you joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to delve into your career, but then also give an update on Sonder's Hong Kong office and how things have been going for us generally in Asia, and what kind of the next 5 years look like for us here in the region. So first and foremost, tell me a bit more about Sonia Taylor, the recruiter, but also Sonia Taylor, the person, and why you decided to move to Hong Kong.
Wow, I'll give you the short story. So I was in recruitment prior to legal recruitment in oil and gas in Houston. That's where I'm originally from, home of Beyonce as well. So yeah, I started my legal recruitment journey when a rec called me out of nowhere and said, hey, have you ever thought about moving abroad? And would you consider legal? And I thought, you know what, like this makes sense kind of with my background. And I knew it was a busy market. Most people told me if you're going to be in recruitment, you should either do legal or finance. I absolutely hate anything finance related, as my husband will tell you. So legal it was, and they suggested either London or Asia. So I had traveled all around the UK before. I thought, you know what? I've never been to Asia. Let's give it a go. But why would they want to hire me? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was put in touch with some companies. This was before Zoom was a big deal, back in the day. And I did everything over like a Teams, call, all my interviews. I ended up choosing Singapore. I joined a company called Pure Search at that time, mainly because I got along well with the people. And I thought Singapore was a good launching point for my expat journey. So I was there for about a year and a half, and then I moved to Hong Kong, and now I've been here, about 8 years.
Great. And I think it's interesting that, as recruiters, we have the opportunity to change people's lives. And in your case, you actually worked as a recruiter as well. And so there is actually rec out there who recruit for recruiters that not a lot of people know about. And what do you, having worked now in Singapore and Hong Kong, what do you think, from a living perspective, what do you think are the major differences? If someone is looking to make a move to Singapore or Hong Kong, what advice could you give them in terms of the difference between the two?
I think it depends on what stage of life you're at, to be honest. I think for me, Singapore was a great jump off spot, and it's great for lawyers. You see a lot of people from Australia or from the UK or from the US because you don't need language skills. Most people, speak English. It's a really easy city to get around. Now the cost of living is high, but so is Hong Kong. Rent is not cheap, but you can make it up in your taxes, which is great. So it's an excellent stop-off point for your Asia journey. For Hong Kong, it's more like New York, into the fact of it's busy. There's 7 million people here that roam the streets. There's, lots of different creative types. It's just a lot more diverse to me than Singapore was. But both are good options.
And why do you think Hong Kong was the right city for Sonder's fifth office?
I think if you think about our two offices in the US, we have, one on one coast, which is LA, one in New York, of course, London, Sydney. We definitely needed an Asia post. And I think, when I interviewed, we talked about Singapore, which I didn't want to move back there. And I think Hong Kong made sense because it is such a integral finance hub. There's so many law firms and hundreds of lawyers here. And I think it absolutely made sense as our fifth office. For
sure. And I think absolutely, just from a footprint perspective and the exposure you get just by being in the city is second to none. And having the opportunity to build something from the ground up is something that you've done really, really well at Sonder. And I think it's not coming out as challenges, for sure. So looking back at the last 12 months, what challenges have you gone through that you've come out the other side, and what have you found the most rewarding about launching an office? And if someone's thinking about that or at a stage of their career where they are at a crossroads thinking to themselves, what's next for me? What advice could you give them?
Yeah, I mean, in 2019, I was actually approached by another company to open a Hong Kong office. And to be honest, I had my path pretty clear in recruitment mapped out for myself. It was going to be to rise as high as I could, manage a team, make those people successful, make a lot of money, hopefully, be very successful in terms of probably staying with one company because I'm a pretty loyal person in general. And then one day, hopefully head up my own office, and then further on down the road, maybe open my own company. And I had those steps mapped out. So when I was approached at that time, I wasn't ready. I knew that. There were still things I needed to learn about myself as a leader, as a manager. The market wasn't right. So when this opportunity came back around, I had to grab it because opportunities like this, they just don't come around often. And it was an established brand, which I had followed for years. I'd seen the expansion happen with Sonder. And, after I met the people, it was like a perfect fit for me. In terms of, what was your other question? Sorry.
The challenges. So
yeah,
setting, it sounds great,
yeah.
Setting up an office, but there is, and some people say that's to me all the time. It's been great. They see the highs of setting up a business, which now has 5 offices, but what you don't see is what's under the bonnet. And, looking back at the last 12 months to where we are now, what challenges did you see and also, what do you look back on you're most proud of?
Challenges, definitely, and I think this is pretty much what every legal recruitment company can say in Hong Kong and in Asia. It is incredibly difficult to find good legal recruiters here, which is great for me, which means I'll always have a job. But it is hard to find good talent. It's hard to find people who have a successful billing history, especially given the fact that we went through COVID. And it's hard to find the right personality fit as well. Obviously, we're really big on personality. We're a small team, so the culture has to be right. I think that's probably been the biggest challenge since we started. In terms of the market, last year, we were just starting to get online here in Hong Kong in terms of, hiring. Now we're in a lot better place. The market is busy, so that's helped a lot. But definitely the biggest challenge has been the hiring part, which obviously now we have Danny, which is amazing. Lauren, our operations person, has moved from London. So we have a tight-knit little group, and, we'll continue to expand.
It's great you pointed that out because I think and I suppose while we're in a job, hiring is probably one of the hardest things for any business out there, and it's also number one in terms of in their AGM minutes. But I think when we're setting up Sonder over the last 10 years, I definitely was hiring not for the right reasons, but I thought that was the thing to do. It was like, how do you grow? You just hire. And I think without the right strategy, it actually can be quite detrimental to your business. And I think culture is so important, and we hang our hat on that. And I think and I suppose that's why it's so difficult to find the right people because not that our standards are super high, but it's so important that you fit and you're on the same path that we're on compared to just having an extra bum on a seat. Because being here with you guys, compared to my last trip, where it was just you in this small office now, in the bigger space, and the team, it feels like a proper, setup, and it feels like, and walking in, everyone's smiling and happy and wanting to help each other out. And to me, that's, looking at it, that's one thing that I feel, incredibly grateful for to be a part of with you is not so much about credentials in terms of having an office, but being able to form a culture where people feel safe and happy coming to work. That's super important to me because that's what I wanted in my career as well.
Absolutely. I think for me, culture is such it's a hard thing to put your finger on, but for me, my first 2 recruitment jobs, the first one I started in the US and then, the second one when I moved abroad, the culture was so good. My mentors that I had were amazing. I just had the best experience. And I would never, ever say anything negative about those 2 companies because they really kind of formed what I know good culture is. Took a bit of a left turn after that, but then I now know what type of culture. And I always said, if I ever lead an office, I want people to be happy to come into work. I want them to look forward to coming. I want them to be excited about what it is that they're doing. And I think those, that formed what I think culture is early on.
Absolutely. And culture is super important to us. And I do believe that's what sets us apart. But what else do you think sets Sonder apart to, say, other recruitment companies or also, legal recruiters?
Can I say our commission scheme?
Yeah.
No, I think that's part of it. As cliche as it sounds, it really is the people. And people do ask me this all the time, like, oh, you've now worked at a couple of recruitment companies. Like, what's so different about Sonder? Like, are you guys just another legal recruitment company? I think one is it's just the people. And I found that because, you guys put me through a pretty rigorous interview process, and I met, I think, almost everyone in the company. I met everyone from marketing to operations to researchers to heads of offices, and I think the one thing through and through were, the people were really nice. No one made it seem like I was going to be a threat or that was coming for their job, or that everyone just was like, yes, we are so excited to have you potentially join this company, and what this could mean for Sonder by having an Asia presence. And I think the people that you've put together is really something special. You should be proud of that.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think when you look at the rigor, and I'm happy you brought that up in terms of the process that we run, because now you've seen on the other side where when we've been hiring and you've been involved in the hiring, it's that when you open up and you get everybody to meet these people, their voice matters and their opinion matters. So just because we do that doesn't mean we really respect what they have to say. So when you do get an offer to join Sonder, you know that you've met with everybody and they really like you. And it's not like you're joining a team where someone said no,
and everyone has to sign off.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's a really big deal. And I think when you incorporate other people in the business saying, look, what do you think about this person? And if someone's like, look, I really don't think that person's going to be a fit, then it's a no.
Yeah.
And you don't question it because you trust the people that you've hired, which is, it sounds really simple, but it's just a great kind of equation on how to hire good people.
Absolutely. I think, there's no point having those processes, and you see it even with some clients sometimes. You have this one partner who's so gung-ho about making this hire, but then they might not have the support because the candidate might have performed at an interview. But, what's the point of having an interview process and have people involved if you're not going to follow what they say? Otherwise,
100%.
just don't include them. I think, looking at the market over the next 12 months, particularly here in Hong Kong, like if I'm an overseas lawyer and I'm thinking about, I want to make a move overseas. So let's just say I'm based in Australia.
Yep.
I don't know what that looks like right now, but I just know that I want to work overseas. What advice could you give them about potentially moving to Hong Kong, and what do you believe a career can give someone with a move to Hong Kong?
Yeah, I'll throw Singapore in that mix as well, because obviously we cover, both areas. I think for someone who's moving to Hong Kong, almost not always, but Mandarin capability is a really big thing right now, because obviously a lot of the deals that we get are from mainland China. So it's not going to be a no if you don't speak Mandarin, but it's definitely helpful. For Singapore, no language skills at all. That's why you do see a lot of Australian lawyers move to Singapore. In terms of, advice, I would say, speak to a good legal recruiter about, what your options are. If this is, something that you're really interested in, start to do some research. Take a look at firms that do what you do. But 100% Hong Kong Tourism Board should put me on their payroll, because I am so I love speaking to people about making international moves. It was the best decision of my life. Mm-hmm. I met my husband here. And if you have the opportunity to move abroad, whether it's Hong Kong, Singapore, London, the US, wherever, just grab it.
For sure. And I think for me, having lived in different cities, and so I can attest to say the same thing. And it actually quite petrifying, because I have 3 small kids now who took a real shining to you yesterday evening.
Yeah.
But the idea of them moving overseas in the future just is petrifying. But for me, the opportunities that you get from that, personally and professionally, you just don't get it. Sitting in your ass. I think you got to go after it, and I think these cities can give you that.
Absolutely. Thankfully, my father was an engineer. He worked overseas all the time. So while he was gone a lot, he would always come back and tell us these stories about, being in China or being in Brazil. And, I think that kind of put something in me at an early age that I knew eventually I wanted to move abroad. When I announced to my family and friends that I was going to move to Singapore, first of all, I don't think anyone even knew where Singapore was on a globe. My mom thought I lost my mind. I think the rest of my friends thought I was going through like a midlife crisis. But my dad was the one who said, like, go. Worst case scenario, you go there for a year, you get to travel, you have some life experience, you can always come back. Now, obviously, that was 10 years later, and I'm still not back. So there you go.
It is so true. You can't always go back. At the end of the day, you could always go back. And I think looking at Hong Kong specifically, then, I know I said this to you on our first trip, and even looking at the office in Hong Kong, it's always been about, find the right person. And with every Sonder office we've opened, we've always been about backing the person, no matter where it is, and then building it around them. And I think it wasn't specifically that we wanted to go, I know we wanted to be in Asia, but to your point, as you raised earlier on, it was either between Singapore or Hong Kong, and you wanted to be in Hong Kong, so here we are. And I think on the first trip that I came here, I was surprised by, it's so different, and it's so vibrant, and there's always things happening, and if people are in a good mood, and I think it was great. And it was really, when I got on that, after my first trip and I got on that plane, I was like, wow, I think there's a lot of things that I just didn't know about Hong Kong. Just because, maybe I was naive to it, or maybe I just didn't do enough research. But, when that first trip, I went back to my wife and said, wow, Hong Kong's going to be incredible. And now on the second trip, bringing my wife and kids, same thing. Every time I come back here, I get more and more excited. For the office, for sure, but then also just in general, the city and the mood, everyone's feeling really, really positive.
It's an easy city to fall in love with. I mean, it really is. My husband's from London. He moved out here. He loves it. It's going to be hard to make us go back, to London or Texas, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a great city to be in.
And looking ahead then, like, what's your vision for the Sonder Hong Kong office specifically, over the next 5 years? And how have you been able to, build relationships locally? Because that's so important. That's been a key ingredient in their success.
The building relationships, Asia, anyone who's lived here, worked here, who's from here will tell you relationships are just kind of the main foundation of Asia in general. So in order to be successful here, you have to have built those relationships. It's not a recruitment city to where you can just fly out CVs and put something against the wall and hope it sticks. And it's taken years. I have one U.S. firm client that it took me 3 years of trying to knock down their door before they finally started to work with me. And now it's one of the best clients I have. So in terms of, the relationships are very, very important in Asia. But what I foresee moving forward for Sonder is, my goal is not to have a 10-man team here. I don't think we need it. I think by keeping, the office small and intimate boutique style, it has the opportunity for everyone to succeed, and just creating a really good, tight culture. I think where we are right now, we genuinely get along really well. We all bounce off each other's ideas. You're only a phone call away or a Zoom away, and it's a really good feeling that you're not so far removed from the owner or from the CEO or from the operations person. Everyone's just pretty close. So the goal is, look, we'll grow as the market continues to grow, but we want to do it organically. We want to do it with the right people. We want to be very specific with the people that we hire, because like I said, I fully believe we have something really special. And if we invite you into that, that's a really big deal.
Absolutely. Everything that we do and I've done at Sonder is always with 5-star service in mind and high performance. And I firmly believe you have to have the right people to execute that vision. And I think if you have one bad person, that can affect the apple cart, completely. And I think what you guys do have here is special right now. And I think it's always so, not that, looking at the other offices, everything's going great. And, I think there's still that startup phase. But looking at the unknown in many ways of what the Hong Kong office could be in the next 5 years is so exciting. I think Sonder's going to be 10 next year. I
was going to say, so you're saying we're the new favorite, favorite child.
It's like having 5 kids, but I think it's just so exciting. And I think that's and that's one thing that about my career, which has been really, really exciting is always, new things, setting up new offices, bringing in new people to the business, and giving them the tools to really get to maximize their potential and giving them the support to do that. I think that's what we do really well at Sonder, is bringing people in and not blocking their creativity, because that's why they join Sonder, and I think that's why they're here. But pushing them to be the best version of themselves, personally and professionally, and we'll continue to do that. And if you look at from a candidate perspective, what do you think makes a successful candidate and recruiter relationship?
Trust. That's the biggest thing. I think, look, I tailor my approach to every candidate differently. I'm definitely not, just because you're a 3 to 5 year IPO lawyer means, I'm going to send you to the top tier US firms. Like, you might be looking for work-life balance, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Although you're probably not an IPO lawyer if you're looking for work-life balance. Trust is a big deal. I have to trust you and you have to trust me. And if you give me that trust, I don't take that lightly. I know that, where I place you or your next step in your career can alter the course of your entire life. It could mean an international move. It could mean, life-changing money in some instances. It could mean this is your path to partner. So, I don't take my responsibility lightly when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the foundation of any successful relationship is the trust. And sometimes it's hard because as a candidate, it's like, oh, I'm giving this person the keys to my career in many ways. Yeah. So it is hard to trust them. But I think you have to go with your gut. And there's so many different recruiters out there. And we always say it, you have to go with someone who you can fully trust, or else just don't do it at all. And I think if you look at, the Hong Kong market specifically, what you've done, guys have done really, really well is that being able to, have candidates really trust you guys, and also clients. So when the market is coming back, is what we're seeing over the last 6 months, and clients are getting busier, your phones have been going off the hook, being like, all right, we weren't hiring 12 months ago, but now we are. And I think it's a testament to the relationships you guys have on the ground here. So what have you been doing over the last 12 months to make sure that you are at front of mind of these clients when, the markets, because it can be tough, particularly as a recruiter, because you're so impatient. You want things to happen tomorrow. But what steps have you done over the last 12 months to make sure that you're front of mind now as the market continues to improve?
Working our butt off, basically, is what we've been doing. Lots of social media stuff. Don't underestimate LinkedIn and the power of LinkedIn. And, when you have thousands and thousands of eyeballs on you, we definitely try to utilize that platform. But reaching out to old contacts, asking for referrals, people that I've placed 5, 6, 7 years ago are now coming back to me going, hey, I know that you placed me here, but I'm thinking about this, or I have a friend, or I'm looking for an international move. And I think that when you have those deep relationships and people do come back to you, like, that says something. There's a trust factor there, like I mentioned. But we have been knocking down a lot of doors. It's a lot of behind the scenes, behind the curtain type situation. But yeah, just good old hard work.
Good old world-class basics.
Yeah.
It doesn't sometimes it doesn't have to be the prettiest or the sexiest. It's all about just, hard work and doing the basics of your job really, really well, and touch points.
Yeah.
I always give the analogy of where we have a house on a street in Sydney. Every time that house is sold, the real estate agent calls me and just gives me an update. Not that we're looking to sell our place, just gives me an update on the general market. And I always found that really, really fascinating, and something I brought into my own practice. You don't always have to be calling someone just to sell them a job, or you don't always have to be calling someone to, try and, fill their, vacancies or their jobs. It's just about checking in. Hey, how are you? How was your weekend?
Yeah.
How are the kids? Stuff like that. That compounds over time. That in a world of transactions, sometimes people lose sight of that. And I think that's something that you guys do really, really well, is, making sure that your candidates are kept abreast of everything that's happening in the legal market, whether that be following you on LinkedIn or just an old-fashioned phone call or a coffee, and same thing with clients. That's been working really well for you and Danny. What are the main obstacles if someone doesn't have Mandarin and they want to make a move to Hong Kong? What advice would you give them in terms of setting them up for success with a move here?
Learn Mandarin? No. Aside from that, I would say, look, not every discipline and not every law firm is going to require it. You can look at like offshore firms, for example. Like, some of them do require Mandarin, but there are a lot of expat lawyers who work at offshore firms. There are certain, corporate teams that don't require it because they do more U.S. facing work. certain arbitration roles perhaps. But I think, if you really do want to move to Asia, then, don't underestimate Singapore either.
Yeah.
They are, in terms of the international hub, definitely there's, lots of good opportunities in Singapore for people who don't speak Mandarin.
Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to flesh out as well with you is giving lawyers a no sometimes is quite, because they don't like being told no. Well, some people, just like most people. But I think, when someone comes to us and they want to make a move overseas and they're in a practice area that just doesn't allow it or not at the right level, and you just say, no, this isn't but I think that's so important sometimes to give that advice, to say, if you don't speak Mandarin, but the requirement is that we need a Mandarin speaker because of X, Y, Z, that's a general need. It's not, we don't make the rules. So in your career and over time, like what do you, in terms of delivering a service to candidates, can you give an example of where, it is probably the best thing to say no, as opposed to trying to have this can-do attitude as a recruiter, which, a lot of people do, particularly because it's sales. It's like, oh, I can make that happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important for lawyers to realize what actually is realistic and what's not realistic with their careers and make a move overseas.
People tell me that all the time. They're like, look, I actually appreciate you telling me why this is not going to be a fit. And I think the biggest thing is the majority of my clients are U.S. firms, and not everyone wants to work at a U.S. firm. It's long hours. It can be pretty brutal in terms of just like the intensity sometimes. So when someone comes to me and they're like, look, I want work-life balance, or I want to be able to go home at 8:00 and see my kids, or, whatever it may be, this group of U.S. firms is not for you. Like, period. And actually, probably none of the roles I have right now will give you that. Or if someone says, well, is it a true mixed corporate role when indeed it's 100% IPO? I will tell you that, because like for me, that goes back to the trust factor. If I'm selling you on something that's false just to try to make a placement, you're going to hate me for it, and you're probably going to leave, which will damage my relationship with the client and damage my relationship with you. So I'm telling people on a daily basis, this is 100% IPO. And they'll be like, okay, I appreciate being honest with me, because I feel like most recruiters won't say that. They'll say it's a split role. But for me, it's like, it's not worth it. I don't want you to come back after week one and say, look, this is not what I signed up for. And then you just walk out the door. Because then I've kind of like screwed you over as well. Like, that's not going to look great on your CV, right? And that's on me. For sure. And let's go back to that trust, and it's also reputation. There's nothing more, the best marketing you can do in this job, in any profession, is referrals. And I think getting a quick win, what I've learned over my career, it's exactly that. It's a quick win. It's never like, doesn't compound, and it's not long standing. There's no such thing as a quick win. Like there really isn't, especially when you are dealing with the level of law firms that we deal with, which is, the best of the best. And a lot of them pay the most. Mm-hmm. So they want the best, and they deserve the best. And that's what we give them. If we're not giving them the best, then what are we doing? It's even going back to the world-class basics. Just doing your job really, really well is the best marketing you can do for yourself in your practice, right? It's even when you give a no to a candidate, and if you've never dealt with this, where someone comes to you and they want to achieve something, you say, that's not possible. But then another recruiter will tell them that it is possible. Then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they call you and be like, yeah, I went with that other recruiter, it wasn't possible, now I'm back. And you build up that trust just by being yourself. So I think that compounds over time just by doing the right thing. And people lose sight of that. And I think at the top end of town, which is where you want to be working, there is no margin for error as it relates to, your reputation, because if you play someone, and I get it, you're not going to get it right all the time, but if you play someone with the wrong intentions, that is not going to set you up for long-term success. And I think, being in industry now for quite some time and seeing people, who you've placed who are now partners at law firms, that's super fulfilling as a recruiter, because you know that you've made a huge difference, not only in that person's life, but also at the firms where they've had a rock star come in laterally and who's now a partner. All right. So if you look at the next 12 months in the Hong Kong legal market, like give me some trends. Like what are you seeing, and what do you foresee the next 12 months looking like in terms of practice areas, and in terms of, I know there's been whispers of firms opening here, and just give me a general kind of run through, and I'm putting you on the spot, and I'll hold you to it in 12 months. Look, I'm just excited about the Hong Kong kind of market coming back. You know, it's been anyone who's been around for the last 5 years, it's been tough. And that's putting it lightly. We had protests, COVID, political turmoil, this, that, economy, law firms leaving. And now it feels like we're moving in the right direction again. It feels like all of us who kind of stayed here and stuck everything out and didn't move away, now we're ready for ours, you know. And I think we can see that with the market and with the economy. We're seeing IPO absolutely booming. Every legal recruiter in town is talking about it. If you look at the number of listings that are happening right now, it's a record. I haven't seen this type of activity since before COVID. I think that's the trend that we will continue to see, which is amazing because for a lot of years, the Hong Kong IPO is what kept the lights on at law firms. So I think those IPO partners are rejoicing. So we're excited about that. We're seeing M&A starting to pick up a bit. Arbitration in Singapore, it's all about energy projects, new U.S. law firms that have been dropping into the market in Singapore. I think there is a pretty big one we're probably going to see over the next 6 months. So yeah, I think Asia overall, busy, moving in the right direction, and you know, hopefully there's more to come.
Exciting. Well, I am buzzing. I think I'm speaking to Danielle, my wife, about my next trip. But thank you so much. I think this has been really enjoyable.
Absolutely.
And I know people will have a lot of, I know people will get a lot of nuggets of information.
Good. I hope so. Yeah. Thank you so much.